All right, welcome to another episode of Ran Out of Talent. I'm Joe Zer Jr., and with me is my co-host Zach Donathan, and we have special guest tonight, Roar President Clayton Young. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Pretty good. Happy to be able to do this.
Yeah, me too. We've been talking about having Clayton on for a while because he was on here while he was running for president, but I mean, obviously the guy's super busy these days trying to keep an organization going and whatnot. And it's a tall task you've taken on there, Clayton.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work. It still's got a ways to go.
Yeah. Well, you've seen the load of questions we're gonna ask you tonight, and I just thought of one or two more I'm gonna kind of shoehorn in there myself. Nothing bad, just about Dirt Oval. But I got
all good.
yeah. I got a few shout outs. Congrats to Scotty Shuttle for having his his wife Jessica having their healthy child. Scotty's owner of Lucky 13 in Wisconsin, and Scotty's been a friend of mine for a very long time now. So congrats to him. Corey Hins, who makes the Paintworks racing videos. If you've seen those on YouTube, they're getting pretty popular. He is retiring as a committee member in general, but head committee for I call it the Minnesota Nitro Series still. They call it the MNRC because they race electric. Nah, it's the Minnesota Nitro Series. So after 22 years of service, congrats, Corey, and enjoy just being a racer. Is one of the better things I did was retiring from the committee. And big shout out to Vern Sprague, who honestly I didn't think he was going to live past Saturday. It was one of those track emergencies that freaked us all out. If Nada Dawkin, one of the owners of the track, wasn't there, man, I don't know. She's a registered nurse, and the rest of us are just a bunch of knuckle draggers. Vern, he got off the driver's stand after his main and just kind of just dropped in. They had to do chest compressions on the guy for a long time until the ambulance came. It ended up being, and this is weird, I've never heard of this, but it is possible. I actually researched it because this part freaked me out. This was all caused by an electrolyte imbalance. Yeah.
Too much Gatorade?
I don't know if it's too much or too little, but yeah, something. Because personally, being in martial arts, I drink in abundance of stuff, and now I'm got to be extra careful. So Clayton, now that shout outs are out of the way, the last time you were on here, you were running for Roar President, and you won the election by a mile. How's it been going so far?
It's had its moments. It's had its ups and downs. Some events go off better than others, but all in all, the real reaction from people has been positive. The online reaction, keyboard warriors who aren't saying anything straight up to you, has been less attractive. Though the last post we did with the last rule changes, I would say that was fairly positive. Like, I didn't see a whole lot of negativity at all in it. So
yeah, right. And the good thing about a lot of the rule changes you're doing, you're giving ample time to manufacturers to research, do product development, and conform to the new rules. And it's instead of just being like, hey guys, next week this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, and we've talked to a lot of them before we actually even make the rule changes. So for the most part, the big players already knew what was coming. And, it's based on their feedback and feedback from stores with products, and like try and make the best decision for everybody so it doesn't leave anybody out when the changes go into effect.
Yeah, right on. You know, and that's the thing too. It's with a lot of the keyboard warriors, you could say the sky is blue, and they'd say the sky is an illusion and the earth is flat. So I don't know. So Zach, you know what? I forgot to ask you. Did you go racing last weekend?
No, I haven't been racing since the Roar Nats.
So you're just chilling to the worlds?
I rebuilt one of my cars last weekend.
Yeah.
It's
After the last,
unfortunate.
That's
yeah,
like a
after,
3 hour process.
yeah.
No, I
Get
seen you
you.
do it in 31 minutes.
That's true. You did see me tear a whole chassis out and go race
Uh-huh.
30. I think it was 37 minutes between
Oh,
the time
30.
I
I'm
started and
sorry.
the time I was on the track. I thought I had more time than that, but I didn't.
That's too much stress. At
Um,
some point, you got to throw in I mean, yeah, it probably went on the track and it was probably right, but you probably didn't drive your best because your heartbeat was going 150 beats a minute.
Actually, I drove
it
really
wasn't the
good,
best.
but the servo came out with like
Ah,
30 seconds left.
oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, I forgot those 2 screws tight.
Yeah, so after the last episode, Zach, I went to work and I started looking up metal and the proper way to do things.
Mm,
And I'm not going to do it, but man, I was close.
okay.
Yep.
We were talking about manufacturing a steel chassis
Yeah.
instead of waiting on Automatics to eventually release one.
So I've been
So I've
hearing
been
that.
running the RAF chassis with the weights, and it's been really good.
Yeah. I've been
It
hearing that
sucks
this.
to cut out one. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was just hearing that some other drivers have a different chassis that is, I would guess and that's the problem. It's a guess, but I have access to every metal on earth. And the
Hmm.
closest thing I can find to it is 1075 blue temper is what would best be described as what they are using right now.
Yeah, I don't know
But
what it is, to be honest.
yeah, well, that's my job is, material ordering, quoting, estimating, all that. And I did the price on a chassis. I'm like, it's right if I were to make them, but I would be the type of guy that makes a stack of chassis and then Awesomatics has 1,000 of them ready to ship.
Oh, it's right after you made them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, who would you buy a chassis from? Me, who doesn't even race a touring car, or the manufacturer?
Right. Right.
So, anyways, Austin checking in. So, do you want to start with the question, Zach, or should I? Because I am at the top of the page right now.
Sure. So, so I'm part of Roar. I'm the Roar Region 5 director, if you guys don't know.
Woohoo!
Um, and so I have, kind of a bias towards Roar because I want them to do well. Not only
Yes.
because I've known Clayton for a long time and he's my friend, but also I think it's good for the sport for them to have a proper governing body that does things appropriately.
Yes.
So when I see Roar making changes, I have kind of an optimistic perspective on why these changes were made, even if I don't agree with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that some people, especially online, don't even give it a chance to see or think about why Roar would change this in this manner. Um, so a lot of, not a lot, but some of the questions that I have and some of the questions that we received are more about the mentality of why certain rules were changed and to, you know, various extents, as opposed to just the rule change. So, I'm going to try not to go like too in depth on questions, but we did, so So, can you explain the reasoning behind eliminating epoxy from spec motors? And how is this good for the racer? And I think it's pretty obvious that it's beneficial for the manufacturer to only have one motor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So back in the day, IFMAR, EFRA, and WAR all approved the same motors.
Yep.
At a point, a manufacturer had done some chamfering that was beyond the rules, and they got called out. But at that point, they called out some other motors that were also doing it that hadn't been caught. So Roar, instead of fixing the problem, accepted the problem and changed their rules. That also was allowing epoxy, chamfers, all the stuff that EFRA said, no, 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 we're not going down that road. So epoxy was allowed with no amount clarified.
Okay.
And so at the first point, it wasn't a big deal to unwind a motor with a little bit of epoxy.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's gotten to the point where you have to soak it for hours to get that to soften, to be able to take a motor apart. And then the other issue that I see as a racer is I race in America and then I go to an IFMAR Worlds and now I have no idea what a motor is going to do, where to gear it, anything, because the motors are completely different than the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was to get us back in line, because the ultimate goal on my part is to just have manufacturers have one approval for the world instead of having to send it for EFRA, for IFMAR, for ROAR. FEMCA uses ours. Japan has some of their own approvals, but they largely use ours, I believe. And I think FAMAR probably uses EFRA stuff. I'm not sure about them. They're
Okay.
the outlier in the major blocks.
Well, Famar is relatively small.
Well, so geographically, they are the largest block because they accept
Yes.
everybody
Oh,
who's not part of the other blocks. But
right.
that doesn't mean they have participants from all those places. So yeah,
Correct.
they are small when it comes to racers.
Yeah.
But the idea was to just get back to where it was to begin with, was get
Right.
everybody on the same page. So no matter where I go race, especially in the world now where people fly to other countries all the time, I don't have to worry about my stuff being completely illegal and having to find some stuff and figure it out at a race.
Right. Sure. Yeah, it's I mean, it does make things way more simple just allowing the same things if Mar allows. Did anybody I mean, not people, but did any manufacturers give you any major pushback or were they all in on it? All in for it, I should say.
I don't remember any of them really pushing back.
Okay.
Even like the one that uses it the most, they were like, "That's fine. That you're actually making our life simpler because now we
Right.
don't have to make multiple versions of a motor. We can just make one, and
Right.
it'll pass all the rules."
Yep.
So manufacturers weren't. I mean, we get a lot of keyboard warrior people that don't understand that without the epoxy, their current wind, the way it's wound, would
Yep.
get hotter. But the upcoming motors, the way that they're making the stators, is going to minimize that. So it's opening a box that was never scientific to begin with, and
Okay.
then making regulations to keep everybody on the same playing field.
Well, and a good majority of those keyboard warriors, they've been saying F Roar on Roar's Facebook page since probably before you got into racing.
Probably.
So, Rick Andrig checking in, Team Exalt driver, X-Ray driver. So the next one is explain the reasoning behind reducing the stack height and allowing a 12.5 millimeter rotors and 25.5 motors. This is going to make the motors faster, something we don't think anybody needs. And Zach and I have been talking about this. So it's like every 4 years, the motors jump up. So like a 17.5 now is equal to a 13.5 4 years ago, and you can keep on going down the road with that.
Yeah, so the problem I had really with all of our motor specs is they were based off of somebody's preference in a motor design instead of any kind of math or science.
Mm-hmm.
So resistance numbers came off of, I like this 25.5 motor, so let's go ahead and take those specs and make those our specs. And I like this 13.5 and this 17.5. There wasn't like, hey, I like this line of motors. Give me your best, what you can do, and then make it logical across all lines of motor. It was more of whoever wanted to pick. I guess the technical director probably is the one who picked different motors out and said this is what they should be. And so the only one that was longer was the 25.5. And so we recently had Reedy, they're making all their lines, and the 25.5 stack ended up getting some coming from some of their 17.5 stacks.
Right.
And I'm like, well, why are they even different? Like, we had to take them out, and of course, Reedy didn't like that. I don't blame them, but it's the only wind where the stator stack was different.
But also realistically, realistically, we can't afford to have things made in America, but it was a manufacturing defect. Like you said, they grabbed a bunch of 17.5 stuff and did the 25
or 21.5 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they were all 17, 21, 13, they're all the same stack size. The only one that was different was 25.5. I'm like, that's
right.
And then the 12.5 rotor, that just puts them in line with the same rotors that all the rest of the wines are using, instead of having them have a different size.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that does make sense. The only thing I'm thinking about with the 12.5 rotor is almost all non-team motors, depending on what manufacturer you go with, 1%, 5%, whatever they call it. If you buy the whatever it is now, what's the motor now? $109 motor. They're all going to have a 12.3 rotor in it.
Most motors come with 12.5, except for the 25.5.
Do they now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They've been that way for a long time. Since I started racing.
I haven't bought a standard off-the-shelf motor since they started coming out with the, top percentage motors.
Well, and now you have the addition of the 2 rotor rule, so you can only have 2 rotors with the motors. So if manufacturers have, some manufacturers have 5 or 6 like 12.5 rotors.
Yep.
So they're going to have to simplify, but that's going to be better for the customer because then they don't have a pile of rotors hanging out. And also it's better for the manufacturer because they don't have a pile of rotors hanging out. And it does help out the racer because, less money spent.
Yep, right. Oh, God. Oh, Jeff Tarrant from Texas and Jacob Schweisberger checking in as well. It's going. Rick is wondering, was the rotor rule put in place just to simplify things for approval?
For tech, really, at the races, because most races, they don't have as stringent as tech as we do. So now you can pretty much see a difference in size between a 12.5 and a 12.3.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you're running a 12.3, it's just going to be less punchy anyways. You may get more RPM. Maybe, it might be beneficial, but most likely it's not. Right. Basically, the rules are making it to where the standard is the best instead of the least.
Yeah. Ooh, just to jump off our list of questions, Jeff is wondering why was Tekin not roar approved?
Tekin not roar approved.
I don't know.
Which Tekin?
I don't know. Maybe
So if
he
they're not on
can.
the list, then they haven't submitted a motor, is most likely, or speed control,
Yeah,
or whatever they're talking about.
sure.
Usually, even if the manufacturer has an issue, it'll just go back and forth with us till they get their issue straightened out.
Gotcha. All right. Zach, do you have the list up?
Yeah. So so we talked earlier about why you changed the, or not you, but why Roar changed the stack height and why they allowed the 12.5 rotor in to the 25.5, for example. But so, and I think you briefly touched on this when you were explaining the first question, but the I talked to a lot of people about the motor rules, and they feel like the new motor rules aren't good for the average racer. And I think they made some good points, but also I think, we talked, and I know the answer to this question, but a lot of people don't. Could you explain the reasoning behind eliminating the minimum stator resistance?
So yeah, that kind of goes back to the same thing as before. The resistances weren't based off of science. They weren't like, oh, well, a wire of this size wrapped this many times, the resistance should be this. It was, oh, I like this motor. And for 13.5, it happened to be one of the weird D3.5s from a long time ago. And so manufacturers couldn't even get to that minimum resistance. And
Yep.
then for some reason, they pick a Novak 25.5. So manufacturers had to put insulation and all kinds of other stuff inside the motor so they wouldn't get over the resistance and go back and forth with us multiple times. So the real answer is that there's still minimum resistance for every motor. It's tracked on our website. The numbers will be there. So if anybody has a question, they'll be able to pull up and see if their motor's legal or illegal. The tracks will, tech officials will. But the numbers that originated weren't based on any kind of mathematical science. It was based on a preference. So it seemed weird that we're going to hold manufacturers to somebody's preference whenever these numbers came out instead of science.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And to bring it back to me being old, back in the day, in the brush days, we never checked resistance on an armature. We just took a guy's motor and unwound it to make sure he wasn't cheating. And if he wasn't cheating, well, it's the claim rule. You had to buy him a new armature or motor.
Yeah,
Is-
and resistance just makes it easier to check. Like I did tech
Yeah.
at the Wild West shootout at Hobby Action in Phoenix.
Okay.
And there were guys there that had motors that were clearly not the right wind.
Yeah. Are you talking oval?
Yeah, I mean, some
Oh,
of them
that's
were modified. Some of them were drag motors, so those were easy to pick out. But some of them were in the right can, just maybe 2-3 winds short of where they should have been.
yeah, no, dude. The oval crowd, that's a whole level of rule interpretation that you've never seen before.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, and most of them were like, well, they sold it to me as a 13.5, and I'm like, I understand that. But so the one that's on the Roar website has a part number and it says stock on it. The one
yep.
you have says modified on it. So that should be a clue that it's not stock. It is highly modified. It's got a resistance of 21 and you're pulling 18 and 17. So like
Well,
you're not even
I'm going to wedge in a question now because
uh-huh.
obviously oval racers need a daddy. Have you been working with Have you been working with the oval community? I know you've been working with the oval community to bring Roar rules like modernize the road rules for the oval community, are you any closer to like solidifying things, or are you still in a lot of discussion, a lot of beginning stages, all that?
I'd say we're past the middle.
Okay.
Jim Pullman is our oval rep, and Justin Allgaier just happens to be running for a championship. So he's kind of been out of pocket
Yeah.
as things get tighter and tighter in the Nationwide Series or
Yeah.
Xfinity Series.
Yep. Yep.
Um, but Scotty Ernst should be back from his travel. We're going to set up a meeting, with some of the bigger oval races. Probably take the Doxy rules and update them for current standards to today and apply them in the rule book. So
Okay.
we can host our first dirt oval nationals since oval left the fold, and see what happens. I think we can get a pretty good turnout.
I would be super pumped for it. I've been getting into sprint cars, man, and that's a whole different. That's a
I
different
ran
thing.
a Jeremy Mayfield prepared sprint car, and that thing was dreamy. Like, you didn't even have to lift; just turn the wheel and don't wreck it.
Yep, and that's the thing too. People are like, "Oh, you don't lift, you must be scrubbing a ton of speed." And it's like, nope. And if you touch something, you're leaving that side of the car on the track while your car keeps going. Oh man, we got a ton of questions. Jeff is wondering why not do handouts like they did back in the day. Dude, I'm going to answer that. It's so expensive to do handouts now. It's not like back in the day
No,
when you used a Green Machine 3 and it was like an extra $40.
it's not though. And I mean, so the comment before that, Brian brings up
Yeah.
Can-Am, and Clayton and I did talk about this because I'm a big fan of handout motors for spec racing personally,
Yes. Well,
especially in a national series type of thing where you can go to all of like the major races. For example, you get this traveling group of motors with these major races, or they're able to buy them however the situation may arise, and you're getting a fair motor, and then you could also do that at a club level, maybe less tech, so you don't have to hand in the motor at the end of the day for like a club level or something like that. But
yeah.
Clayton, would you care to elaborate on why Can-Am died?
I mean, these are my opinions. I
Oh, I'm sorry.
did like that it brought the racing closer. But all it does, in my opinion, all it does is take one more thing away from the driver or the crew guys,
Mhm.
your motor guys' ability to tune a car. So now everybody for Can-Am, you were fixed gear, fixed motor. So everybody ran the same gear. Nobody had to think about it. And those guys, while they could drive a few laps, they couldn't drive a race. So
Okay.
then you got people driving above their head a lot more, and it did bring things closer. But I think people like being able to buy something and work on it. That's
Yep.
why we buy cars in the first place. And when you do the Can-Am thing, I don't think it would be a bad idea for a nationals, but like I think that's kind of the problem with USGT is USGT was the bee's knees, and then we went to the USGT motor. Everybody gets the same motor unless you buy 1,000 of them and try and find the very best edge of something, or you bake this, or you
Right.
do that. So then it kind of lost its luster and it's kind of fading away because there's a part of the racing that doesn't change. So
So,
Hold on,
I
hold on. So we could do a spec handout motor for the guys that don't want to dick with tuning motors and just race the class. And then we could have like a class where like you could do whatever you wanted and run like some motor. Oh, you
do
see where
whatever
I'm
you
going. Oh, you
wanted.
could run modified and stock. Oh, okay. Sorry.
yeah.
As a
So
modified guy.
also though, I'm an early USGT guy. I ran it back in 2016. You know what was cool about USGT? Being
It looked like race
competitive,
cars.
yes. And then all of a sudden they didn't, and they looked just like
The
a kind of a little more wonky touring car with shittier tires. Why not just run 21.5 touring car?
P0 was a downfall, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
should have never been.
absolutely. I mean, we can talk all we want, but we all still like the look of a cool car. But if a
Yep.
cool car is not competitive, well, then we're also all racers. We're going to run the fastest body.
Yep.
Bowman's wondering, does Roar still have a claim rule in place, cost to claim another racer's motor?
Roar has a claim rule, but a racer does not have that ability.
Okay. Interesting.
It's $150.
Yeah, dude. And you're probably still $100 short on the cost of the actual motor.
The guys that we're taking them from probably aren't paying for them anyway. So
true.
Let's wait on Rick's question because that's in the questions.
That is, yes. Is there going to be pre-tech or also post-tech now? Jacob is wondering. So he's wondering about post-tech. I don't know, man.
You should already have been doing post-tech.
Yeah. Usually all the cars come off. They go to post-tech. The tech inspector will check either random or top 3, and then they'll be released.
So let's go to question 4 here. What is, because, okay, I'm not going to say who, why, what, when, how, but back when we first started this podcast, a lot of people don't know. Back in the day, the Hobby Wing 3.1 was the ESC to have, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is a Hobby Wing special." No, we found the manufacturer in Japan. What am I saying? China, excuse me, that sold blank Hobby Wing 3.1s for $30 a piece if you bought them in bulk, and we could put any software in the world we wanted in them. So this is a good question. What is with all the lockdown on Blinky Mode ESC? Did some of the cheating happen that caused the new rules, or is it Roar keeping updating and adapting with technology?
It's a little of both. Mm-hmm. So manufacturers, instead of adding boost to their speedos, were adding regress timing. So you turn your motor up, and then it would apply negative timing up to 0. So your blinky busters don't catch any of that because your line never goes over the 0 mark.
Right.
So that part of our stuff is that, and in investigating how we missed that, we noticed some other things. I'm a software programmer by trade, so I know it's much easier to do than people think. But
so the first co-host of this podcast is a software programmer as well, and that's as far as I'll go into that.
Yeah, so that's why we're getting more strict with them. I've even entertained the idea, and I think I brought it up last meeting with the board, of what would stop us from just going to blinky only speedos, so that the spec ones can never have booster timing.
Well, that's not a bad idea. And again, back in the day, you had your basic general settings, but the timing and boost, that, in my opinion, shouldn't have ever been put on the table in the first place. If you want more, motor all the way up to a 3.5,
Yeah, I think it helps in mod, the boost and turbo, but in stock, it's it's not allowed.
But you could have two. You could have a just stock speedo from Hobby Wing, for example. But then you have another thing for racers to buy. So
we did find the just stock software update that did some funky things, but after you reset it, then that funky stuff went away.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was a software glitch, but like I updated my just stock and my mud boss, and I could tell it had turbo because it it would kick out of the corner and then slow down on the straightaway, and I'm like, that's a little strange. And so I
Yeah.
said to him, and he's like, yeah, I don't know what this thing is really doing, but it's definitely not legal. And when you reset it, then it's okay because
Yeah.
I can't
And
do it. So I'm
we
like, okay.
shouldn't just we even though a lot of us deal with a lot of hobby wing, we shouldn't just point them out. This can be done with any ESC manufacturer out there.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I was just pointing to my experience. And it was just
Right.
funky.
I know back in the day, way not many years, but way back in the day when the Tekin Hotwire was the top thing, and you had to have your laptop at the track. There was one or two versions of that early software that people could manipulate very easily and became roar illegal fairly quickly.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing too is like there may be versions that are or older than their current version, which is the legal version. And so if somebody sees the legal version's 3.1, say, and
Yeah.
they go to the track, and the guy's got 3.0, oh well, he must be good because it's a version before the legal version. So that's why we're deleting all this stuff out of our ESC approvals. All the old ones, it's only
Hmm.
the current one that's legal because there's
Gotcha.
too much confusion as to which versions are approved. And
And it's
we're just going with the current version, period.
always a great thing to have a very clean list and a very clear list of things as well. I'm glad because Zach and I one episode, we're going through legal IFMAR motors for the worlds. And some of those motors hadn't been made for 10 years.
Yeah, they're probably just as bad as we were.
I
Our
think
lists
worse.
were 10, 15 years old. Like now that we've got Tim Moore on our as technical director, he consistently brings up things that we haven't kept up to date, and then we start scrubbing the list and getting things right.
Yep. Let's see. Let's look. Brian's saying that Roar needs a claim rule for racers at the Nats. This would even help even the field. They have a bike claim rule for MX. Yeah, motocross is a little more. Well, it should be a little more serious. It's not to some people though. Jason saying they need to cut down on the number of classes for off road. That all depends on the track, in my opinion.
Yeah, we need to cut down on classes. Period for Nats. I think we allow too many exhibition classes.
Sure.
You're either racing for a national title at nationals or you're not. Like that's just my feeling.
Brian's saying, and when you catch them cheating, what happens beyond a slap on the wrist? I think if you catch them cheating, it's a DQ. Is it more severe than a DQ if you catch them actually cheating, like with software?
No, no, we'll disqualify their run.
Okay. Well,
We've kicked somebody out of an event for using illegal sauce,
Mm,
but for the most part, we're bringing them motors through technical inspection. The ESCs are going through technical inspection before they go on the track. So if we find something funky either before or after the race, then stuff will be confiscated and rechecked or disqualified.
sure. All right. You want to hit the next one, Zach?
Sure. So, you guys extended the use for the epoxy motors until December of 2026. So they'll be legal until then. But I didn't see a cutoff date for submission of epoxy motors.
I mean, if they want to submit one in November and keep it there for 1 month, it's up to them. But no, we're not. They can submit them whenever. But we anticipate with the rule change that they're just going to submit the new stuff because it'll be more powerful than the epoxy motors are now.
Okay. All right. And let's see here. Here's a good one. Explain the change behind the battery approval process, because Zach and I were both talking about this, and it's like, well, were they even checking batteries? Were you just looking for like rows complying on the case? What was the approval before and what is it now?
Yeah, so before it's pretty much the same as now, with the fact that they don't have to send 3 packs anymore.
Okay.
Um, the we have to have the NATO forms and like whatever the compliance forms are for lithium batteries. So that
Yep.
way the insurance covers these being raced at our races.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I thought it was kind of silly that they would have to send 3 packs uh, per size,
Sure.
just for us to keep them. So we're having them send one. We can break it apart. So another thing brought to us by the oval community is the 2 cells that have a space between their plugs, so you can overcharge, then pull it up and discharge that one to the correct voltage, and then when you go check, you just pull your lead up a little bit so that they
Mm.
put it on your leads and you're getting the right voltage, and then when you go race, you push it all the way down, and now you're at like I don't know, 0.3, 3/10, half tenth over the voltage mark. So
Oof.
Billy will break them apart or test them all the way through at
Okay.
measured points to make sure that the batteries aren't uh, illegal.
Yeah, man, that's just too much work. I don't know if you've ever ran a pack that's been charged to the live E limit, but it
I did.
feels it feels weird because I've been to races before to where they're like expert stock. The difference between expert and independent stock is independent had to be at 420 and expert could charge all the way up to 435 per cell, something like that. And you charge up to that, it almost feels like a little bit of unwanted turbo.
Yeah, I
Like
can see that.
that first minute, it's like, ooh, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel linear, but it is faster. Absolutely, it is faster. So,
Yeah, I've ran it because at our Hobby Town tracks, it's 21.5 open.
yep,
So they don't really have you know, blinky boosted voltage. It's just run
yeah.
whatever. So
If they
I've
allow it,
run races at 8.6, and then I've ran
mhm,
them at 8.4, and I might have been a tenth faster at the beginning, but
yeah,
in general, it wasn't that much of a difference for me.
yeah. But I've spent hundreds of dollars to gain a tenth in on every car. You know,
Well, you can spend less money and just work on your cars and make them faster through the corner.
but it's not as much fun as spending money and putting things in the car. I do that as well. I work on the cars and I spend the cash. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure we all have the ultrasonic trick with the bearings. I
Yeah,
use I hate saying this on the podcast because some dummy's going to do it wrong, but I like that Robbins Thal lighter fluid in the yellow bottle in my ultrasonic cleaner to clean the bearings out, and that really gets it clean. And just depending on the car, usually a thin oil. I might go thin, medium with certain vehicles, but like with my Wheeler, I'll go up to a medium because it's like, that's a lot of pressure on all those bearings. But
You
uh,
are overthinking this far too much.
yeah, it's
Uh,
probably more placebo than actual.
it is, but it's every little bit. That's not all I do. That's just one of the things I do. When some people, it takes them 4 hours to build a two-wheel buggy,
all right.
it takes me probably 20 hours because of the filing and the polishing and the
Well, we know
cleaning.
you're a little slow. It's okay, Joe.
I
We'll
am
let that
also a little slow. I'll give you that.
um,
Man.
so we're getting into some questions that were submitted. Somebody wanted to know, with the changing of the motor rules in 2026 now, what are your thoughts about determining exactly what motor to use and more strict specifications for stock, super stock, and mod classes.
So we have talked about that on the board, even recently, and the agreement was it's really track dependent, because if you have a track that's 80 feet by 40 feet, a stock 21.5 is plenty fast. Where if you have a track that's 150 feet by 70 feet, that 21.5 is going to be dog slow.
Yep.
So we're leaving it up to tracks, even with GT12 and the LMH class. It's up to them what motor to run. We shouldn't be telling them. Like, we're not supposed to be, as Roar, we're not supposed to be pushing people towards one specific manufacturer for anything. Kind of the reason that we had to get rid of the USGT and VTA rolls back to where they came from, because they're going to everything spec by gravity, which is fine, but it's not what we're there to promote all brands. So it makes it open more for the tracks to decide what's best for them.
Yeah. Ooh, I think Rick Provost means LIHV packs, not Lifey. Because Lifey packs are, I don't know what they charge to, but they're 6.6. Yeah. But yeah,
but they're not as fast.
No, they're not. They're
that would slow
safer.
everybody down. We can make everybody run Lifey packs.
They're safer.
They would last longer.
Yeah, they are. You know, I've seen Lifey packs go bad, and it's not nearly as devastating as a lipo.
Yeah, I had a house fire from one of them.
Yeah. Rick says, "Don't restrict my transmitter's batteries, man. He needs extra voltage." Oh man. So we kind of covered that about considering having different turn motors for smaller and larger tracks. Would you consider having a period when you can submit products for, instead of being able to submit year round, similar to ETS? This could be done for on-road, off-road, A-scale, off-road, and have different periods for each.
Yeah, so what I found was the IFMAR way was really bad for manufacturers. Mm-hmm. They took motor approvals in December or January for a race that's in November or December of the next year, and they had no more opportunities to submit anything because they missed the 1 month window of whenever their product was supposed to be on the list. So I don't see us going to that model, just because I don't want to restrict somebody coming up with something at any point in the year. And to be honest, on-road racing is year-round. They're either indoors or outdoors. There's no good time to just stop and say, okay, now we're going to approve products.
So I'm going to shoehorn a kind of a funny question in there as well. Have you guys, since you've been in charge, you don't have to say who, why, what, or when, but have you looked at a motor and been like, did you guys even try to make this legal, or are you just trying to see if we're paying attention?
Gotta think about that one.
Yeah. So there has been some 25.5s that were way out of the box.
Okay.
But it wasn't like they were trying to make them out of the box. It was more, you do your stator size, you wrap the wire, and wow, you're 10 ohms under. Like,
oh yeah.
So,
and that's Braden wondering, can you explain how the new submission works for motor approval works in terms of resistance? And like we said, resistance isn't really going to be a thing anymore, is it?
Yes, so it will be. It'll be posted on the approval. So that way you can still know, your 17.5 resistance is supposed to be 35.4 and yours is 31. Then that motor is never going to be legal. Like, there's something weird with it.
Jeff is wondering which one's asking for a friend. We got the Christmas Classic coming up here in beginning in December. I'm going to be race directing it, but it is fun. Watching, because Dollar Hobbies is a smaller track. They're smaller than 80 by 40 by a little bit. And 25.5 on that track, it's so tight and it's so much fun. You cannot blink or you're going to be, I mean, if you're down, if you tap, you're going from first to six in a lap. It's
Yeah, 180
Makes
is
for
like
good
that
racing.
up in Middle River. I think it's 80 by 40, maybe.
yeah,
It's
And
smaller than
it's
that.
got some of the best people in the country. So if you're stuck, you're a lap down. If you
yeah,
have to get marshaled, you're going a lap down.
yeah,
But it's the best place to learn because you'll get humbled really quick and have to work on your stuff and turn a million laps.
yeah. Jeff is saying 76 by 43, the size of the track. So,
Yeah, so
you know,
21.5 would be really fast, and 25.5 is probably fine.
they're running mod touring car there with actual they're not just putting like 13.5s in and calling it a day. They're running mod.
So I'll chime in on this because I've done it. You can run mod on a smaller track than that because I have, and it's essentially like running on the infield of a track, an indoor carpet track. You don't get on the straightaway, well you do, but it's more like
It's a
then you
blip.
gotta let off. Yeah. So it's just like running on the infield the whole time.
Yep.
And there's not a problem running. We did five O's. You just turn the boost down, you turn the turbo way down, so you just get a little bit in the middle of the straightaway, and then yeah,
What were
it's
your
not too
lap
bad.
times compared to stock?
About 0.3 a lap faster.
Yeah, I was gonna say the faster guys. I want to say Brian was about a half second faster. Brian's fast.
hmm Yeah, so the bigger the track, essentially the faster the mod cars can
Yeah.
go. But this was on a 36 by 60 track. So
So it's teeny.
yeah,
A
but that's
mini
where I
track?
grew up racing.
Yeah.
What?
A mini Z track?
Yeah, you do what you can. Um, yeah. So Braden, there's still going to be a minimum resistance per motor based off of the motors that are submitted, but in terms of like the overall minimum resistance, it's going to be not, not there. So, but if you
I
have,
can see a minimum resistance coming back in a couple years, but right now we have no science to base it off of, and it wasn't based on science to begin with. So that it didn't make sense to just hold manufacture to something like that.
Yeah. It's pretty wild when you go to a large event and you see some of the fast guys with literally dozens of motors in their hands being like, check this one, doesn't pass, check this one, doesn't pass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The fast guys I run with, we usually bring two motors, and one of the twos is going to pass. So like, we don't really
Oh,
worry about it.
I'm an off-road guy, so I don't know if they're trying too hard or what it is, but and again, I don't name names on here, but it makes sense if you knew who I was talking about.
Yeah, I have seen a few of the off-road motor manufacturers bring motors over and over until they get tired of giving them to us.
Uh,
Mhm.
Jeff
We
Jeff
don't give
is
them back
wondering
if they're illegal.
Jeff is wondering about A scale Nats for 2025. Bids are still going on for that, aren't they?
The tracks have been selected. We're working on dates.
Gotcha.
I don't want to
So
let any cats out of the bag,
you don't
but
have
there
to.
are no bad national tracks this year. There's no, I mean, not bad.
Well,
There's no tracks that somebody hasn't heard of for nationals in any genre this year, except
Jeff's got a
Nitro.
good
There's
question.
no track.
Why not make the rules such as that a motor can be 100% tech non-destructively? That is a good question. I think
Is
Novak
unpacking a
Ballistics.
motor though, isn't that destructive?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it would have to involve all of the major blocks getting together and deciding on a new rule package for motors, which I'm not sure is going to be beneficial for anybody
That
other
would
than the
almost
tech
be like
people.
a that almost be like a 5-year plan because that would be rebuilding the motor from the ground up.
Yeah, I think somebody would have to have an idea of how you could make a motor that's disassemblable that doesn't adversely affect it greatly when you unwind it and wind it back.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And so we could actually, back in the brush days,
Oh my
we could
goodness.
do. I know we could do this, but you had to be super careful not to crack the epoxy on the windings because if you did that and those windings touch, you just go poof. But it was possible back in the day.
I mean,
Jeff
yeah,
is, Jeff
anything's
is-
Stop it.
possible. Just the whole idea of unwinding an electric motor and then
it's a pain.
winding it back doesn't sound feasible for the average Joe.
No.
I've done it. It's hard, and it does not look good when you're done with it. Because you start with, well, because they're starting with straight wire, and you're starting with curved wire.
Yeah.
And if you, it's a long story, but that's the short version. It doesn't look good when you're done with it.
Okay.
Matt's got a good this will be a simple question, but are there spec motors out now that will meet the new future rules?
There are a few that don't have epoxy, but not many.
Right. I think there's a version of that Hobbywing G4 for IFMAR that does not have epoxy that most Americans should be able to get.
Yes, the IFMAR
So,
versions would not have epoxy.
so
The
moving
BRCA
forward,
and EFRA versions also don't have epoxy.
Yeah.
right, we're the only ones that allow it.
Yep.
Right.
So we kind of talked about this, and I've been talking to Lance about something to this effect. And I don't know exactly the right phrasing to ask this, but how come there isn't a national series for that Roar promotes similar to like ETS, EOS, and then like we have here in the States, at least for off road with the INS races?
Honestly, I don't know that we could manage a series with enough entries that it would not drive us into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Most of the nationals right now, we just break even if we don't lose money. So to run a series, you're probably talking about less entries for all the races, but the costs for each race is pretty much going to be the same.
Right.
So I don't know how the manufacturers have asked for it too. I mean, my first thought was, okay, well, let's get with the big races that already exist and see if they would be part of the national series. And I had some buy-in for that originally, but then Roar decided not to follow through with it. We already had tracks lined up. We were going to announce it at the LCRC race in 2019, 2020, whatever the Nitro Nats was in LCRC last. And the committee or president at the time decided not to do it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think we need any more races.
Yeah.
I think
Jeff's right. Yeah.
I think that there's already too many big races or even regional races. Like it seems like every weekend is taken up by 2 or 3 races, sometimes of the same discipline, um, sometimes even close together in the country. So I would love to see, like just for 8 scale, for example, like the Dave Lycum races, all be part of like a Roar thing, and then we could have I don't think it would really be much more than to have, Roar would have to provide some kind of value to those tracks for them to be a part of it, because it's going to be kind of a pain to get everybody to be a Roar member, but then it would be like very profitable. Well, I shouldn't say that. You would have more cash flow. Roar would have more cash flow because you would have a lot more members.
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys that are going to those races, probably probably half of them are members already.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be as big a deal to make them members. It would be more, can DNC handle having Roar Tech make sure all the stuff's legit,
Yeah.
versus just kind of run what you run kind of deal. Like I've never been to one, so I don't know how strict their tech is.
Well, I
From
know at Silver
not
State they were
strict, so
doing a little bit of tech, but I'm not sure exactly how much tech they were doing on the A scale side because I was there running fifth scale.
I think they do some post deck if there's anything weird, but I don't think I was at P&B 2 years ago, and I don't think they did any tech.
Yeah,
yeah,
different.
for them is probably fuel tanks, because that's what we usually find the most discrepancy with. People don't put their inserts in, and then they can run an extra minute, and it makes it better when they're in the longer races, I guess.
It'd be pretty wild if a person made their car underweight with A scale. It's possible, but man, it takes
Yeah,
a
nobody's
lot.
typically that close.
You're going to be Swiss cheesing the chassis like the old RC10 days. Jeff says there's no tech. He was there this year. Man, I swear they had a tech table. I could be, well, I'm obviously wrong, but and again, I was mostly running fifth scale. I barely even looked at A scale this year. Here's the question: is there a concern at Roar for the cost of racing?
No, I would say largely no. I feel like sticking arbitrary price limits, like we used to have the motor limit of no motor can cost more than $150. So manufacturers would then sell a motor for $150 and then sell you $100 of hop-up parts. Well, we have no way of verifying somebody who's done hop-up parts or bought a motor for 150. There's no.
I mean, it's really easy to do that. So you sell hop-up parts for a motor, your motor's no longer Roar approved.
Well, that's true.
There's ways to do it, and that's just something I came up with, and I know that's probably not like a great answer, but I mean, I think there could be a cost, like the spec motor across the nation would be one, and yes, you have to buy a motor, and yes, it would have to be for it to be like cost effective. A handout motor at one race, it's only used at one race and becomes a paperweight elsewhere. But I mean, there are ways to do it that make sense, and would help with costs for racers. If it's not our concern for Roar, then it's not concerned.
Right.
It was one of the questions that we were somebody submitted.
Yeah. Oh, Jason, he's like, just like taxes, we need simple rules and simple tech. Jason, taxes are simple. For the government side, the government knows exactly how much you owe down to the penny, but they make it difficult for you to figure that out. And if you're wrong, you go to prison. So taxes
or pay
are
more money.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that Wesley Snipes deal when he got bamboozled into being like, oh, you don't have to pay income tax. And when he got in trouble, he paid that income tax immediately, but he still had to go to prison for 2 years.
Yeah, that's crap.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having to put headlight stickers on your car or your run didn't count.
I remember for a long time people did it with a marker.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's nice to have them on there, but you go out and beat everybody's butt with a spray can body, you still beat the butt. The headlights did not change anything.
No. Did you ever watch Clayton? It's on YouTube. It's a small summary of the 1968 Roar Nationals.
No, I've not seen that.
it's a pretty fun watch, but it's so old school, and I think things like the headlight stickers and the clear windows and junk like that is crap left over from that original 1968 Nationals.
Mm. Yeah, I think bodies look better with tinted windows. I don't
Yeah,
want to. I don't want to spray can paint it over, but like
yeah,
like Max Mockler has that orange with like purple tint on his windows. That looks really
yeah.
cool.
That is slick. Okay, is it your go or my go,
I don't
Zach?
know. So how do you feel about um having an echelon of classes, or like a class for beginners that seasoned racers like ourselves shouldn't belong in, and then more of, a way to keep it friendly for beginners?
So I I would love to have a beginners ish class, but I don't know that it's for nationals. Because
Right, but this would be
nationals, you're going to compete against the best in the country, not typically be the best first person or new person to a nationals. That would whittle the entries down for that class fairly small. I think nationally we need to have some kind of driver's license thing like the RCA does,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have enough tracks involved to make it work right now. Um, but I think the way the BRCA does it is probably it. I think it's kind of like our BMX. You have to work your way up licenses
Yes.
to run different things.
So since you've taken over as president and you have guys like Brent in the organization and all that, and you have actual racers and hobby shop owners and all that junk. Have you noticed an increase in track participation with Roar, or has it remained about the same?
We've definitely got more track participation. We had a choice for every single race this year, and I
That's
don't
good.
we haven't had that. Even when I was just competition director, we didn't have choices. We were beating the bushes to find tracks.
Hmm.
So to have multiple tracks to choose from for every race was pretty awesome.
That is cool.
well.
Oh,
Plus, there's been a nice uptick in track activity in Region 5.
yeah.
yes, yes, yes. It's all Region 5.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's
No.
all Region 5. We just did our part.
Yeah. Well,
Actually,
that's
I think you have two coming up.
Uh, oh, right. I know I signed up 4 or 5 tracks since I've been this
I
year.
mean, nationals.
Yeah. No,
One second, my daughter's calling. Sorry.
so I
So
think not this year, but next election, the way my racing's been, it's been picking up, but locally and tapering off for travel races. I think not this election, but the next one. If the Region 7 spot's still open, I think I'm going to have to go for it.
well, next year is they should be in the end of. So I think the regional directors are 2 years.
Okay.
So it's not going to be in 26. So it'll be at 27. Or you'll have to like do a campaign, put your name in there at the end of 26 and call it a
Okay.
day. Do it. Just do it.
Yeah, I should.
Make it better.
I've been talking about it too long, and now that I'm no longer an MNRC committee member, and I'm like I said, I'm still racing weekly, but
Sorry
I'm
about
not
that.
going to weekend races every week. I think I could feasibly be a Region 7 director. But I've also, though, I picked up my gym activity. I'm doing either Muay Thai or Jiu Jitsu 6 days a week.
Stop it. It's like an hour a week I put in. And
That's
most
what
of
you
it's just
put it.
answering questions. Yeah, but it's just answering questions
Oh,
and
you're
talking
saying
to
for a
people.
regional director. I'm like, in the
Yes.
gym, you only put in an hour and you're a freaking blue belt?
Well, some of us
I'm
don't talk,
Skinny
so I don't
mini.
know what to tell you.
I'm gonna freaking heel hook the hell out of you when I see you.
We absolutely not. No heel hooking in the game.
Oh, pff.
We don't even have a region director for your region. That's
No,
sad.
they haven't. They haven't had one since Aaron Bonner, and I don't believe Aaron Bonner wanted to be a region director.
Huh.
I'm trying here, Clayton, but he's not giving me any help. I've been on him for like a solid year about this.
Yeah,
There's multiple good people in Minnesota that I've been hounding to become just do something. And
yeah,
it's if it's not like a whole bunch, just do something because it's better than nothing.
that is true.
So let's get back on because we're going to be up here all night if we don't.
Yeah, we only got a few questions left though.
That's true, but we keep getting sidetracked. You take this one. I gotta.
Yeah. So, Clayton, what are your thoughts on the industry-wide decrease in sales and name brands releasing microcars like Team Associated's done a ton, Losey's done a ton, Kyosho's always done a lot of them, you know.
Um, I don't like get market trends from the manufacturers as to what
Okay.
is, what isn't working. I've been asked about like, do we want to bring Mini Z into the fold? My instant
Yeah.
reaction is no. We've got enough on our plate already.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm thinking it might go the same way as drag racing did. Like, oh yeah,
Mm.
drag racing is a new thing, blah blah blah. And now it's kind of like drag race. What? Like,
You know what? Two things wreck drag racing. That C6 Corvette body, like we were talking earlier,
mhm.
because it just looks like a pro mod car. And they went away with the spirit of the class. It's no longer a short course truck, set up like a drag car. Technically, they follow the rules, but man, they went from cars that you shouldn't have even been able to do 2.4 seconds with. Now they're doing 1.4 seconds and close to 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, they totally crapped all over the spirit of the rules. But
Yeah, and they don't have like real motor rules. So I'm guessing
no,
they don't have these spec classes anymore.
no, they had 13.5 for quite a while, but honestly, I quit following it because it stopped being exciting because you're seeing the two exact same cars go down the track with the C6 Spotties, and they are going straight as an arrow, and nobody's pedaling. It's not the same as it was,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
I could never get
Uh,
into it because they like there's no. I'm sure there was some driver ability, but it's probably more reaction time than driver
yeah,
ability. And
the
people were setting up their transmitters to go through different stages of the throttle
that's
pull.
it too.
I was like, so you're not even like you're not doing it. The radio is doing it. Yeah, yeah. You
Correct.
just set it all up. I'm like, well, that sounds like crap. Like you're not even like you're not in control of it. It's just doing its thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what makes it beautiful. I'm like, no,
no,
I could write software. The thing could just drive itself. I don't even
yeah,
have to be there. Like
yeah,
at this time, you go.
yeah. When Tim Smith used to talk about it on his podcast, I'm like, man, this went from super cool to really sucky. Because
Mm-hmm.
because Tim Smith was one of the first, he was one of the originators of the no prep drag racing, and he's the one who took a SC10 truck, put drag tires on it, and put like a 55 Chevy body on it. And he's like, hey, a new class. And everybody's like, neat. And they came up with rules that were good, but they didn't go hard enough with the rules. And now they just got a $3,000 drag car.
I think that's on the low side.
Yeah, it is actually. I mean, people want to complain about the cost of my fifth scale, and it's like go drag racing. You're gonna spend more. Um, Jeff says the lesson from drag racing is that if you let racers and manufacturers run wild, they'll kill the sport. That's true.
We saw that for a little while from 2012 to about 2020 with Roar.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Clayton, another question, and I've asked you this before in passing. Have you talked to Matt Olson anymore, trying to team up with him to come up with like a set of fifth scale rules and to maybe have a large scale Roar Nationals for off road?
No, NAFRA has asked if we could do the same thing because they would like to get drivers from America to go to a fifth scale worlds. It looks like the fifth scale worlds are always going to be in Europe from now on because
Okay.
there's just not interest in other countries. And
There's
like, I don't know how you would get your cars over there. Like, there's a lot of questions I would have as to how much we could participate.
Well, there's two big things with Europe. With that is they don't allow loud pipes. You have to have a silence pipe, and reed motors aren't allowed. But other than that, because regardless, you're either going to ship your motor over there because you're not going to be able to take a fuel tank that's had fuel in it or a motor that's had fuel in it on a plane. At least you're not supposed to. I know a guy that does it, and he makes me laugh every time he does it.
Can you not ship them like in luggage? Could you put them under the plane?
Not if it's had gasoline through it, no.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, technically, no. Now, I'm not going to name him, but I have a buddy that flies all the time with what I consider a dirty truck, and he gets through just fine. So,
Yeah, I mean, how do people ship their 8 scale stuff around? I would imagine it's in their luggage.
nitromethane's different,
Oh, okay.
and the motors are different too. Because I mean, it's literally just a big 2-stroke motor. Like my motor's 30.5 cc Bartolone Reed engine that pulls 10 horsepower, and that motor's not legal overseas.
Hmm.
I know you guys used to do large scale on road events. My dad's been to one actually way back in the day, and they just weren't popular. I understand why it's a hesitant deal to do a fifth scale off road Roar Nationals, but we do have. I bet you if you did it in the right spot, I bet we could get 200 entries.
Hmm.
Well,
But
you got Vegas. How many entries did Joey's race get?
155, but I bet you if you do it at like Cheese City in Wisconsin, you could get 200. The Vegas race, and I've been to tracks all over with everything. The Vegas race, it's more about Vegas and less about racing. And that's what it is too. If you took that track and put it in Missouri, you would get 30 entries.
Hmm.
So that's my opinion, anyways.
So
We're on our last. Oh, go ahead.
So somebody asked, will you update the financial transparency records on Roar's website? It looks like the last one's from 2016.
Yes, absolutely. We were going to do it this year, and our administrator categorized stuff incorrectly in QuickBooks. So it looked like we made $500,000 and we had no cost, and that's not accurate.
Oh man, I'm just thinking of the kind of rage if that mistake got let through. Holy crap, they would want your head on a stick.
Well, I mean, they've been losing $30,000 a year until I took over. 30,000 a year. So,
on the
just
books,
the fact that
30
we're
grand.
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I pretty much know where it went, but I mean, there's no way to get it back.
Right.
So, yes, Tim Caparel is administrator now, and Everything's categorized correctly. That's how we know that my dream of using Live RC to broadcast all our races has got to go bye-bye, because we spent about 65% of the money we took in from races to Live RC, and that's just not there. We have other expenses for races like trophies and the
Yep.
RMT team getting there and the tracks getting some money. So
Hey,
I
Clayton,
can't just go with a fixed cost for an event.
I do have a recommendation to talk to Mod and Elite RC, because, well, I've been a part of a couple of mod events, and I've actually been in the booth for an INS event, and what they charge is a break-even amount.
Yeah, so we did ask them, both of them, to
Okay.
come up with a plan,
Yep.
but neither one could cover every race. And
Oh,
so we were stuck with, hey, Live RC can cover all the races. They've come up with a plan to get the same kind of coverage that we would get from Mod or Elite.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. That if we're going to get to that level, let's go ahead and do it. And what I didn't realize was, part of our agreement was that we would cover hotel and transportation costs.
Mhm.
And then that
Mhm.
was like another 1,500 to 2,000, depending on where the race was, on top of the fee that we are giving them. So it ended up eating a lot more money.
Right.
I mean,
Um,
we didn't lose money, but we didn't really make any money. So
okay, yeah, and that sucks, because you got to have a little bit for a rainy day.
yeah, well, I mean, we have $30,000 that we have to pay for the administrator to be able to take care of just everything. He's the only paid position, and then we
Sure.
have like $30,000 in insurance costs between tracks and members
Mhm.
and boards, so they don't get sued by a manufacturer and lose their personal wealth, because they are all voluntary. So, there's upfront costs that ROAR has to cover, which membership helps.
Yep.
Tracks coming into the fold helps.
You
It
know,
also helped now that the administrator is actually looking at the tracks that are still on our insurance list, because it doesn't look like that's been cleaned out for quite a few years. So
I bet 70% of them are gone.
yeah,
So
I don't know if it's quite that much, because we were getting, as we turn around, we do better events. People are more interested in getting that Roar National Championship. It's always been Roar National Championship. Okay, it's cool, but there's DNC and there's these other big races. It
Yeah.
seems like it's starting to go back towards, okay, those are big races. They run differently, but if you want to go to the most fair racing in the world, you go
Mhm.
to a Roar National, and everybody's on the same playing field.
All right. I got a little off the list question. I know you know the answer to it. You don't have to tell me where, but when will the location of the 2026 1A scale off-road worlds be announced?
Yes. Once we've released the nationals tracks
Oh, okay.
for this year,
Yep.
we'll take bids for that race. They wanted us to open them last month, but we're opening up nationals. So like, I didn't want to get things fudged together.
Sure.
So I would expect before the end of the year to have an announcement where the 2026 Nitro Nats will be, or Nitro Worlds will be.
Because I'm gonna go there and just watch and create content and maybe corner the Matrix tire guy, but that was a rant from a previous.
could you elaborate on some of the responsibilities that the administrator has, that since they are a paid position, why they are a paid position?
Yes. So, wow. Where do you start? So they have to pay all the insurance bills. They have to take every race entry and process that and make sure that they're a member. And if they're not a member, reach out to them saying, hey, your membership's not current. They have to take every world's entry and process that information, making sure, again, that they're still Roar members and that they will be Roar members when the world event happens. They have to
Mhm.
deal with IFMAR sending the money. Like for the Bakersfield race, we've already sent them $13,000, $14,000 from the entry fees for our stuff because it has to be done before the race. They basically manage probably 150 emails every day and then reach out to the appropriate people. If a battery manufacturer or motor manufacturer or speed control manufacturer is having a problem with an approval or has a question about getting something approved, he forwards that and gets them in contact with the right people and answers pretty much any question that anybody has, whether it's a member or not, and CCs me pretty much on everything.
So you get the 150. Oh man, you know what I hate the most? When I get CC'd on emails that have nothing to do with me, which is 70% of the emails I get.
Yeah, they do. It's more of like a, hey, just so you know, here's what I told this guy. So
Yeah.
they say, oh, the administrator was a total jerk to me. And I see the email that he said, you are trying to sign up a week before the nationals. You have to pay the late fee.
Right.
He's not being a jerk. He's just
No.
telling you straight up, you waited to the last second. You still have to pay a late fee. Well, that's ridiculous. I can go race real cars for cheaper than this. Okay, go race real cars. Have fun. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not about stopping you from doing anything, but when people register late for a nationals, that incurs a bunch of costs and it disappoints some people because they may have won the e-main,
Yeah.
but there's no trophies for them because there was only C+5. Like, we wouldn't have thought there
Right.
would have been an e-main. So like,
Oh.
we can't prepare. We might not have enough officials at the race to deal with an extra 75 people that show up at the last minute. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
So
it is. You know, and this is totally different sport, but with like jiu-jitsu tournaments, you're going to pay between 25 and 40% more if you sign up the week of instead of like 2 months out. Ooh, we got a few checking in from YouTube. We got KRD, Klein Race Car Designs, and Theodore checking in. YouTube channel slowly growing, but most of our views on the video come from Facebook. And I would say that's not even 10%. A lot of our listens come from downloads, actually, almost all of them exclusively. Jeff
Yeah,
is
we're not
wondering.
that good to look at.
Yeah, I know. We asked about the Bruggy Truggy body rules for 2025. As Jeff is wondering, is there any clarification on that one?
No, I've pretty much dropped the ball on that one.
Okay.
Hence, Machado is now our new secretary. That's one of those things that I told him, like, we get on these side tangents and then something important will happen and then I'll drop the ball on something that we were going with. The manufacturers are literally waiting for a line drawing so we can stick some dimensions on it. That's where that stands. So there won't be any changes for next year either. And hopefully I'll get back on track getting that straight.
Gotcha. So the majority of these questions did come from Jeff Choban. This one's from Corey Hins, though. We kind of condensed it a little bit, but he's wondering, will there be a funnel system to the nationals from regional races, increasing the importance to a regional race, similar to the funnel system for the worlds from national events?
Right. So that is the goal. And if we ever have a race that's filled up and somebody was in the A in their regional, I will find them a spot.
Okay.
We don't have that in place yet, but we will make that happen.
Well,
I definitely want regionals to hold precedence.
You guys are doing so much, and I do appreciate that. Every month when you have your monthly meeting, you post the minutes on the Facebook page like clockwork every month, and it shows everything, and it's always significantly different from month to month. So
yeah, and
I
that's
appreciate
my whole
that.
thing has been give everybody as much information as possible. We may forget something, but I would rather people have more information than less. And maybe they don't like it. Okay, you don't like it. What do you think would be better? Not it just sucks. Like
Yeah.
if you you want to make something better, you have to have a solution. Just saying it sucks or you're stupid, that's never going to make anything better.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, most of the people talking smack on Facebook page have been doing it since when did the Roar Facebook page start? 2009, 2010?
I have no idea.
And I've been seeing the same guys on there since being like, "Oh, this sucks. You all suck. You need to be we need something new." It's like,
Right.
well,
When are
actually,
you putting in your bid?
that was something new was tried, and you know what happened? Racers got scammed out of money. A dude's like, I got this better idea, better plan, all that. And he laid out this deal, and a ton of racers paid him. I think it was like $50 for a yearly membership. And I forget what the organization was called. And when the money stopped flowing in, he shut down the Facebook page and disappeared.
Oh,
So, yeah, so the last time something was tried, people were scammed out of their money.
Which isn't to say that. I mean, I think there's a lot of good things going for War. And I mean, I think there's a lot of things that they could do that would be better. And
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
depends on what you want to do with it. And you can't piss off everybody because you need people to race. But that's a personal opinion, not a.
But we're doing
yeah, I'm all
Roy's
about
doing. Oh, go ahead.
trying things to make things better. Like I'm not afraid to try things. It just has to make financial sense and time sense so that, certain people aren't putting forth all the effort for no reason.
Right. And, I'll be honest, Roar, until you came along, Clayton, Roar really hasn't tried since Norca was around. It's like when Norca went away, Roar almost didn't stop all the way trying, but man, they went it wasn't the same.
The attitude was driving me crazy. Like, we're Roar, they have to do what we say. I'm like, no, we won't exist with that attitude. Like,
right.
We have to. They're our members. Like, without them, we are nothing. So,
right.
Like, your logic makes it's like Disney. We're Disney. Fuck you. Like, you got to actually want customers there. You've got to want the people there. And yeah, you're not going to make everybody happy. But if you continue to listen and try and move things in the right direction, then you'll get the people that you want. So
right. Jeff is wondering, sorry if I missed this earlier, what is the point? Oh man, the question just disappeared. Dang it.
So he wants to know what's the point of adding LMH bodies to the rules, but not speccing a motor out, which we already went over already. So he thinks it can double the number of touring car classes.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find the open motor replacement for 25, like another touring class, because 25.5 touring had been the hot thing because there's no motors slower than 25.5. So to like make that make sense, instead of having 4 touring car classes, super slow, stock and super stock and mod, like let's make them look like real race cars and like make it something instead of body that doesn't look like a vehicle and drive it around the track. Like, try and make something different to make it fun and look legit.
I always still wish Formula One would have taken off. That would be a class I'd be into, but I'll be honest, rubber tire wreck the way those cars handle.
Oh yeah, I've never driven a foam one. I drove a rubber tire one. I was horrible at it. Like, it would just break loose. It was frustrating.
Yeah. Rick says when his OnlyFans page takes off, he'll buy us a big building with a track.
We have talked about a Hall of Fame. That would be cool.
That would be rad to have a Hall of Fame because, I mean, I could probably give you a dozen suggestions myself right off. So both Zach and I were wondering this earlier this week. Are you running for president again?
Originally, I said no, but I am running again.
Good.
There's just too many things that need to get done. Um, and my life schedule has freed up a little bit more now. So um, I
Well,
will have more time. And I would like to get it really right and all documented before um, I transition out, really.
I'll be as vague as humanly possible, but with being Roar president, was that one of the reasons why you are currently single?
It does take a lot of
That's fun.
time, which does not allow for time to be a good boyfriend.
That, yeah. You know,
That's a
when I
nice
was,
way to say that because this is really funny. It's good.
yeah, when I was younger, in my teens and early 20s, but I met my wife when I was close to 22. I've
I
been
met
with
one
her
of
for,
when I was 17, 18.
yeah, I've been with my wife for forever, and I'll
That's great.
probably be, yeah. But before her, I've had girls literally say it's either RC or me, and immediately I broke it off with them. Immediately, every single
Anytime there's an
time.
ultimatum.
Yep.
My last girlfriend, she was happy with me racing. Like
Hmm.
she was fine with it. She would watch the live RC stream and she would know not to comment if I didn't do good, and she would congratulate me when I did do good. So
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
that wasn't a problem. It just it there's not a day that I can think of where you don't have to answer some question or some fire or some emergency, some new motor or speed controls doing something. I know it. I can see it on the track. And so, like, you're constantly investigating and looking and trying to make sure things are all above board. And when they're not, trying to reach out to manufacturers to find the best solution for not only them, but their customers, the racers, and everybody involved.
Hmm. Oh, Andrig says family is why he can't really step up and try to really contribute. He said once his kids are gone, maybe he can get away with it. No, Rick, once your kids become teenagers, my kids are teenager. Well, Joey's going to be 13 next week. My daughter is 15, almost 16. My name's no longer dad. It's bro. You know, it's like Jackie, I love spending time with her, but man, getting her out of her room or because she's always doing school this, school that, to where I'm not involved. Joe 3, I don't want to play Switch games. So the only time him and I honestly spend together is when I bring him to jiu-jitsu and he's in kids class. So when he's in kids class, I spar kickboxing or when we race. You know, once your kids become teenagers, they don't want it hurts, it sucks. They don't want a damn thing to do with me. You know,
Mine's a senior right now, so she she's doing a lot of things that require money. So she interacts when she needs replenished.
yeah, yeah, that's it too. Jeff has the I would call it de-evolution. It goes from dada to daddy to dad to bruh to asshole to old man.
Yeah, I haven't got to any of those stages, but
Yeah, yeah. So
A
Rick's saying
couple
his
more
oldest.
questions for you.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. I can't be on here for longer than 2 hours, so it's fine.
Okay, let's hit.
Um, so we only have one more question on the list, but Jeff asked another question, and Jeff, maybe you would like to take Clayton on a date now that he's newly single, and you could buy him dinner and ask him all these questions. Um, he will be at the next Roar Nationals and the Worlds if you're interested. Um, but Jeff wants to know. It seems like why it seems like your goal isn't to, well, that's my phrasing interpretation. I'll just read his question. Why isn't the goal to provide consistent and consistency and cohesion, rather than further fragmenting an already spread thin class, referencing the LMA for touring car.
So is he asking why don't we just run a stock and a mod class and make everybody run them?
He said cohesion. So I'm thinking what he meant is that he thinks the rules that are being implemented now are not an idea to make less classes, but to make more classes.
Oh, because he thinks that they'll run USGT, VTA, LMH. So some of the USGT and VTA classes will be going away from nationals. The track will end up having to pick. I think we let him pick 2 or 3 last year. It'll probably be 2 this year.
But we don't, Jeff. We don't.
Yeah. Jeff says he likes long walks on the beach and barbecue, and he's a cuddler. No, this
last a little spoon.
Yeah. Jason's wondering any plans to help tracks get new racers to build overall growth to pump membership versus going after existing racers. Our Indy classes are the biggest by far, but get least amount of attention or support aimed at them. Man, that's a tough one.
Sorry?
Well, he's saying the independent classes get the most racers, but the least attention. Well, that's a tough one because I'll speak from this from my end. With the exception of a couple of tippy top racers that are sometimes in the independent classes, I'd really prefer to watch, the expert classes, the mod classes. But now, as far as support goes, it sounds like you have a track that supports those independent guys, and that helps out a lot. Another thing is, if the track is a roar track, man, I don't know if this is the case anymore. Clayton, if the track's a roar track, do the racers have to be a roar member to race there?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
Because I remember
it works as long as they're both covered.
Right. I remember back in the day, I used to race at the Heart of America for Nitro On Road, and we had to be roar members because it was a roar. We weren't a track; we were a series that traveled around, but it was a roar deal. So,
So I think he's saying we need to get the independent drivers more exposure. Is that what he's saying?
Yes,
maybe, but they get good exposure through Live RC and Mod and all those guys and Elite.
Just not as much as the pro guys, but also like a lot of the independent races, Jason, I don't know if you've been to them, but there's like 1 or 2 exciting heats of races. Sometimes there's like a battle that's exciting in a particular race, but most of the time the less talented drivers running the independent classes aren't that fun to watch.
So, but they are fun to interview. And that was part of my frustration with Live RC, was getting them to understand that all those lower drivers are the ones that are like entertaining. Like they may have a story that you don't know about that would be good to get out there, even if it's just they can pull it up on YouTube and then show their friends back at the track. I went to nationals and I was on the stream. They interviewed me because I won my heat. And so then, shoot, I want to go to nationals because then maybe I'll get on the stream. It's just more exposure to get the independent drivers interviews and FaceTime. And maybe they aren't the best drivers, but sometimes that's the most entertaining. It's the ones guys that can't make it around the track. You're just hoping that they get a clean lap and you're watching them struggle. It can work both ways. And that's part of my hope is that we finally get to a place that every race, the winner of that heat, whatever, goes over, does an interview instead of marshals. And the show goes on, they're finishing the interview as the next race is starting, maybe they're 30 seconds in. That's about the time you could tell where somebody's out on the overall tracker, which is the other disappointment that I had. I'd asked for like a NASCAR tracker in our
Mm-hmm.
broadcast so that you could see overall where these people were running, because Live RC has it. It just never
Yeah.
got put in the broadcast.
I'll tell you what, when that's the one thing Mod and Elite does correctly. Because I did a lot of the interviews for Mod at an INS event, and independent TQ, Plex spec, because we were at the Hobby Plex. I don't know if they had Plex spec, but they had independent state. Didn't matter. The TQ got talked to, and if it was a good race between 2 or 3 people, they all got an interview, regardless of the class.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you need to look for the story. Did this
Mm-hmm.
guy come to an INS race from 2,000 miles away? Like,
Oh yeah, we had a
yeah,
dude there from Australia that was like, I forget where he was. He was middle to the bottom, but it was fun to talk about. And we were able to interview him at one point for a reason I can't remember exactly. And it's cool to have a guy on there with an Australian accent at an American race.
yeah, yeah.
So, last question. And this one was kind of important to me, and I really like what EFRA does. They're making the bids public and letting the EFRA members choose on where they would like to go. Is it possible for Roar to do the same? Maybe do it on not the Facebook page, because you're going to get a lot of pissing and moaning, but maybe a link. The website, you have to sign in with your Roar membership because you are a Roar member, and maybe make this decision and vote there, whatever.
Yeah,
Is that possible to do?
I think if we get enough Roar tracks that makes
Mm-hmm.
it viable, that would make sense. Right now, we get 2 or 3 tracks per discipline per se.
Yep.
And I'm not sure we have enough participation that would be a legit vote. It might be, oh, this local track got their 20 or 30 people together, where that track just is well known and the pros aren't going to get on and vote anyway, so they got
Sure.
15 votes. I think if we get enough participation nationwide, then that would make more sense. I just don't think we're at that point yet.
Right. So just more numbers all the way around is what we need.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Because I'd
that
like to
is
get
kind
a national track directory that's legit up. I'd like to have a national calendar. So you say, I want to know where 8 scale is racing, whether it's around my area or somewhere near or whatever. You could just go to the website and look at it. I think A-Main is working on something like that, to have some kind of national schedule. But it would be nice to have that, put the Joey Christensen races and like all the other big races out there, so somebody could
Sure.
see, here's where I can go to an event, whether there were or not. Like, just promoting racing in general makes the sport better.
Right. And well, I know with the off-road, you have so many events on everywhere. To just a scale, you could fill an entire summer. Rick's saying important part is getting tracks that are capable of hosting a national. So many closures of major tracks over the last couple of years, and little clubs can't afford to host something like that most of the time, and their facilities are not big enough. Now, have you ever dealt with that to where, I don't think you've had to deal with that, but where Mimi's might have been like that, but where you go to the track and it's just, it can't handle 120 people.
I mean, as a racer, I've been to places like that, but for the national bids, I mean, we've had some that are close, but it's all worked out in the end.
Yeah. All right. We're going to have to end soon, but Jeff is wondering, what are the top 3 things you want Roar to accomplish in the next 2 to 3 years.
So I'd like to get our memberships to be recurring, so that people don't have to worry about, oh, it lapsed because this New Year's Nats was 2 weeks after last year's Nats time-wise, and so my membership is expired, where it could have just been get our affiliates cleaned up, because I'm 100% certain some affiliates have affiliate status with actually not paying or renewing.
Sure.
Get our tracks to be cleaned up and annual. There's a lot of web stuff that we're in the middle of cleaning up to make everybody's life easier. I know that now when you go on there, you can at least see your membership information.
Yeah.
There were some people that theirs didn't show up, which then we realized there was a few database entries that were there's a few different databases didn't really have a key to lock them in. So
Okay.
the new administrator had to go and start cleaning that up, which then led to tracks having the same issue and affiliates having the same issue.
Okay.
Approvals, being able to put them up in a way that everybody can get pictures and see all the information easier. The forums are going to go away, and we're just going to have it. So when you go to the approval, you'll be able to click on it and see any of the imagery that was done during the approval process.
Okay. Yeah.
And really just putting on top-notch events that 90% of the people are happy. You're never going to make everybody happy, but
No.
the majority should be happy.
Yeah. For the next till the end of time, the same people that have been complaining on the Roar page will be complaining till the end of time. You can't make those
That's
guys.
not true. That is not true. Cole Ogden, I met him in 2018, I think, in Hutto, or 2019 in Hutto.
Yep.
And he was like, "You are the biggest bag of dicks I've ever seen in my life." And he was right.
Like Cole.
He was totally right. And the last 2 Nats, he's been totally pleasant and smiling and having a good time.
Yep.
And even when we got there was part of the trophies that were wrong at the Chico Nats, he's like, "The event went really good, so I'll overlook that you guys screwed this part up." So people
it's gonna be perfect.
Yeah. All right, guys. We've answered so many freaking questions. I think this was a good episode, and we're under Zach's 2-hour window, so I think we should keep it there before we go on for another hour.
It's so much stuff we can talk about.
I know, but
we have to do this more often.
Yeah, guys, just let me know.
Absolutely. But we know you're busy. We don't want to take up all your time, but hey, we found a little window where we could get you in, and yeah. So, all right, well, let's get this one done. I'm Joser Jr., and with me was Roar President Clayton Young and my co-host Zach Donathan, and we have ran out of talent. Have a good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.